Good afternoon, everyone. Bear with me while I log on this recording. And so I don't know why it does that. But we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out. And yes, and so we are live. Yes, there we go. We are live. I see there is one person with a thumbs up. And let me see who's there. Kevin, I'm here. What's up? What's up, Kev? All right. I don't know if you're able to log on to the Teams or what. However, we're going to start this segment and we're going to figure out why we're having problems with people logging on. And so today, once again, my name is Craig. I'm your recovery coach. And today, and this is our last segment in this group on PTSD. And so we Ashley. Okay, I got Ashley. She's coming on. And so let me see if I can share Ashley on the screen. What happened? Is that her? Okay. Anyway, let me get right into it. How you doing, Ashley? Good to see that you are able to log on. And so, like I said earlier, this is going to be our last segment on PTSD. June is PTSD month. PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. And so let's get right into it without further delay. This article is brought to you by verywellmind.com. Go online and pull this article up. And so the article goes on to say a post-traumatic stress disorder trigger can include any sound, sight, smell, thought, or another reminder of a traumatic event. Such triggers are sometimes apparent, but they can also be subtle and more challenging to identify. It says PTSD triggers may be all around you, even though it may sometimes feel like PTSD symptoms come out of the blue. PTSD symptoms rarely spontaneously occur. All right, and so it said, whether you are aware of it or not, PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. Symptoms are often triggered or cued by something in our internal, anything that happens within our body, such as thoughts or feelings, or external, anything that happens outside of our body, such as a stressful situation, environment. So we're going to touch on a little about external triggers and external, all right? Internal and external. Certain thoughts, feelings, or situations can bring up uncomfortable PTSD symptoms, such as memories of a traumatic event or feeling on edge and anxious. One way of coping with these symptoms is by increasing your awareness of these triggers. And so that's our goal today, to bring some awareness. You can prevent or lessen the impact of certain PTSD symptoms by identifying what specific types of thoughts, feelings, and situations trigger them, and then taking steps to limit the occurrence or impact of those triggers. And so the article make mention that we can minimize of how we are allowing external and internal triggers to control how we respond. And so we want to respond appropriately with healthy thoughts and behaviors. Let's get into, all right, I forgot to put that on, and there it goes, scrolling across the screen, and that is the title, How to Identify and Cope with your PTSD triggers, right? And so let's talk about types of PTSD triggers. Triggers can fall into two categories: internal triggers and external triggers. Internal triggers are things that you feel or experience inside your body. Internal triggers include thoughts or memories, emotions, and body sensations. For example, your heart racing, that is a trigger. That's an internal trigger. External triggers are situations, people, and places you might encounter throughout your day or things that happen outside your body. All right. And so there is a list of the first one. First one we want to talk about is internal triggers. And if you're not aware of them, of these, the ones that I'm going to read out, maybe you can identify, maybe you have experience. I know I have experience with internal triggers as well as external triggers. But right now we want to talk about internal. And so it says internal triggers are anger, anxiety, feeling abandoned, feeling lonely, feeling out of control, feeling vulnerable, frustration. You know, a lot of times we get frustrated, you know, a conversation or a situation may arise and we may get really frustrated. And that's what they call internal triggers. It says memories, muscle tension, pain, racing heartbeat, and sadness. Those are internal triggers. Let's talk about what the article make mention of externals. And some of the external triggers are an anniversary, an argument, I know that's one. Certain smells, end of a relationship can be an external trigger for PTSD. Holidays, you know, especially if you've been in a bad, what we call a toxic situation, it can cause some type of stress. If you look back on it, and then you may feel that you're not feeling the best day, especially when it comes to anniversaries. If you was in a toxic relationship and it's anniversary, and now you're in a divorce, and now you remember those anniversary days, and now you know things it coming back to you in your memory. You say, "Wow, man, I remember I used to go through this, or we used to go through this. We used to argue. We used to have arguments and certain smells, and et cetera, et cetera." But these are external triggers. Holidays, all right? You could have bad holidays experience. Reading a news article that reminds you of your traumatic event, all right? Seeing someone who reminds you or of a person connected to your traumatic event. A specific place, watching a movie or television show that reminds you of your traumatic event. And the last one talks about witnessing a car accident. And those are external triggers. All right. And so now we want to touch on this one is so important as well. Being able to identify your triggers. Some triggers are fairly obvious and easy to identify. For example, a news report covering a trauma similar to what you experienced might trigger symptoms of PTSD. However, other cues, right? Other cues, and so they're talking about stimuli or something that's going to spark a thought or a memory. It says other cues are more subtle reminders that you might not even notice until after you had a negative reaction, right? To identify your PTSD triggers, think of when your PTSD symptoms usually come up. Ask yourself the following question to identify your triggers. What type of situation are you in? And I know that's kind of hard when you're in the heat of a battle or the heat of an argument or heat of a situation. You know, it might be challenging to ask yourself at that moment. But when you reflect back on it, you may say, what type of situation was I in at the time? What is happening around me? What are some of the things that were going on around me? What was my perception? How was I feeling? Why did I respond, or how could I respond differently? What kind of emotions are you feeling, right? And so now we're talking about at the present tense, but when you look on, a lot of times we may not be able to make that assessment right then and there because so many things may be going on at that given moment. However, when we step back and take a assessment or an inventory, these are some of the questions that we may want to ask ourselves. What type of situation was I in? What was happening at the given moment? What emotions was I feeling? What thoughts was I having at the given time? And what does your body feels like? What does your body feels like when you are in external triggers, when there are external triggers going on, and internal triggers, right? It says, get out a sheet of paper and write down as many internal and external triggers as possible. Now, we're not going to do no exercise right now because this is a hybrid meeting and I don't see no one's faces. The only thing I can see that y'all are logged in, Kevin and Ashley. All right. So you may want to type in comments or unmute yourself. However, feel free. So I'm going to read on and we'll continue as such. It says, you can do this process on your own. All right. Oh, hold up. I'm getting ahead of myself. It says, keeping track of your experiences and what was happening before you began to experience symptoms can help you better understand your trigger. All right. And so basically you taking inventory, you writing down notes of your thoughts, of the situation, what was going on around you, some of your emotions, and what your body felt like at the given time. It says you can do this process on your own, right? It said, but working with a mental health professional can be helpful. Your therapist can help you figure out your triggers and come up with a plan for how to deal with your PTSD symptoms. All right. So it's always good to, I encourage anyone, mostly those who I come in contact with, to always seek those who are professional. I am a recovery coach. I'm not a counselor nor a therapist. However, always seek sound advice. This hybrid group is only basically to give you some awareness so that we can become healthy and live a better lifestyle. Next one we want to talk about, and this is so profound, and that is coping with triggers. It's so important. Coping with triggers, avoiding your triggers is the most effective way to avoid having PTSD symptoms. However, this is almost impossible to do. Why? I'm glad you asked. You cannot avoid your thoughts. You cannot avoid your emotions, and you cannot avoid your body's sensation. Many of these are out of our control. All right, and so those are the things we cannot avoid. That is our thoughts, our emotions, and our body sensation. However, there are ways to cope with all three of those. And so it says, with external triggers, there are some steps you can take to manage your environment. For example, not going to certain places that you know will trigger a reaction. But you cannot control everything that happens to you. For example, you might inadvertently come into contact with a news story or conversation that reminds you of your traumatic event. Because you often cannot avoid triggers, it is important to learn ways of coping with triggers. Effective, healthy coping strategies for lessening the impact of triggers include, and we're going to find out some steps that we can take, all right, to deal with or to cope with triggers. And one of them is self-help strategy. let's talk about self-help strategy. Several self-care and relaxation techniques can help cope with anxiety, stress, and PTSD triggers. Some that you might find helpful include deep breathing can help calm your body's stress response when you encounter a triggering situation. All right. When I was in the therapeutic community, a TC program or peer recovery program, when I was in recovery, I was in a program, and so we used to do a breathing exercise. They call it behavior modification, desensitization uh, exercises. And so there are several, but the one that they normally basically was using was to be able to close your eyes, imagining that you are in a calm place, and be able to listen to uh, your heart rhythm and think of pleasant thoughts. So that's a form of self-help strategies, and that there are several you can look into and find ones that you like best. And so this article just suggests deep breathing. The next one talks about expressive writing. I'm not a writer. I'm big on writing. I know people who love to write, and I take my hat off to you. A lot of times I get what they call writer's block, and so for those who very good with the pen, I encourage you to use that approach when it comes to lessening or coping with PTSD. So it says expressive writing can help you progress the feelings, thoughts, and emotions and memories that contribute to PTSD. Grounding techniques, I never heard of this one. Grounding techniques can help you focus on the present moment instead of your own trigger. Mindfulness involves learning how to become more self-aware and focus on the present rather than worrying about the past or future. That's a good one. Relaxation techniques can help you soothe your mind and body when you start to feel stress or anxiety. Self-soothing can be a way of comforting yourself when you are feeling overwhelmed. Self-soothing, I believe, is when you tell yourself, everything's going to be all right. Relax, calm down, uh, focus, things of that nature. That I believe that is a good exercise. Social support can provide encouragement and strength as you deal with stressful memories. And so it's always good to have good people in your corner, a support system, a support network that will assist you in being more at ease when you're at a heightened level of frustration, because we talked about some of the internal triggers, and one of them was frustration, right? Muscle tension, when we are really uptight, right? And so it says being more aware of your triggers can be beneficial. As a result of this increased awareness, your emotional reaction may feel more understandable, valid, predictable, and less out of control. This can positively impact your mood and overall well-being. All right, that was a mouthful, but that was self-help strategies: deep breathing, expressive writing, grounding technique, mindfulness, relaxation, self-soothing, and social support. Next one we want to talk about, and that is psychotherapy. See, as I'm reading this information in this material, I'm doing self-reflecting, because a lot of times I remember when I I have to go through all of these exercises, or not all of them, but most of them, and I have to go through these stages and phases of learning, because they're so important to become and to remain uh, sober and to keep my recovery intact. And so psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is a variety of psychotherapy approaches can help deal with PTSD triggers. Techniques that can be effective include CBT, better known as cognitive behavioral therapy, right? This approach helps people identify and change negative thoughts contributing to distressing emotions and behaviors. And so in CBT, one of the ways, one of the form of dealing with cognitive behavioral therapy is to, like the article says, change your thought patterns from a negative. We call that positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement. So if you have negative thoughts, you must replace those negative thoughts with positive thoughts. And if you try it sometimes, for me, when I try, let me keep the focus on me. When I try positive reinforcement, 9/10 of the time, I'm able to change the outcome of that given situation. Okay, I feel that I don't come up on the end of the stick. You know, what I mean by that, I found out that the consequences, once I start applying positive reinforcement, the consequences at the end of the day, I don't end up on the short end of the stick, meaning that I don't have to pay for responding to negativity in an inappropriate way. And so I've learned to use that as my go-to approach. All right, it's tough, but we have to keep working at it and keep utilizing it. The next one talks about exposure therapy. This is a form of CBT. There's someone else on. Let me see. All right, Will. All right. So, okay, get back into it. I just want to acknowledge you that I see you on the screen. Exposure therapy. This is a form of CBT that involves gradual, progressive exposure for a triggering stimulus. Nice. This is often paired with relaxation strategies. Over time, the fear response begins to fade. Eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. This one is fairly new to me. I never heard it, but let's see what the article says. This techniques involve using bilateral eye movements to help people process and cope with difficult memories, emotions, and thoughts. By learning to process these experiences, people may better cope with PTSD strategy. Now, listen, I'm reading off this paper, but I'm quite sure that a therapist is more trained and more sophisticated in ways how to implement these strategies. And so I highly recommend that you would do some research and reach out if you need it. But if you think this material is good enough, okay. But if you find yourself in a situation where you may say, well, you know what, let me give a therapist a try. And you might say, well, I don't have the insurance, or I may not have the knowledge of where to find them. That's what a recovery coach is here to do, to assist you on ways to how to navigate and find resources. All right. And so the last one talks about cognitive processing therapy. This is another form of CBT that helps people process traumatic events and develop new strategies. All right. We got that all covered. So let's go on to the next one. Bear with me, everyone. And this one, a lot of people, and so this one is dealt with medication. And I don't know, sometimes I believe when people hear the word medication, it's like taboo. People get fearful, people get stigmatized, people get stereotyped because a lot of times people feel that they don't need medication to assist with any PTSD that they may be experiencing. However, sometimes you may need it, and I'm not the one to say. I'll let the professionals do that. But let's talk about what the article is making mention. It said medication. Some medication may be prescribed to help people manage some of the symptoms people experience. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, often used to treat depression and anxiety, are sometimes used to help relieve symptoms of PTSD. All right, they are commonly prescribed. And so some of them are, so it says SSRIs that are commonly prescribed are Ephoror. Then they have, I believe they have a generic that says venlafaxine, a serotonin non-repinephrine reuptake inhibitor. All right, those are some big medical words, and so bear, if I mispronounce them, please forgive me. This SNRI is sometimes prescribed to treat PTSD. The more strategies you have available to you, the better off you will be in managing your triggers. In addition, the more coping strategies you have, the more likely you will be able to prevent the development of unhealthy coping strategies, such as alcohol and drug use. And so the last one we're going to cover and talk about, and that is, we're coming to the end. It says, have a safety plan in place. So important to have a safety plan in place. The article says, although it is important to increase your awareness of your triggers, doing so can cause some distress. Let me read that again. It says, although it is important to increase your awareness of your triggers, doing so can cause some distress. So I want to read that again because I don't want people to be distressed or feel that they're becoming overwhelmed by the information, right? But we're trying to keep people safe. So it says some people might become triggered by trying to identify their triggers, right? Therefore, before you take steps to identify your triggers, listen close. Before you take steps to identify your triggers, ensure you have a safety plan in place in case you experience some distress. All right? It says if you need extra support, reach out to a mental health professional. Thank you. A therapist can help you identify and cope with your PTSD triggers in a safe and supportive setting. All right? And so always, please, if there is an issue, if you're feeling distressed, always seek a mental health professional or a therapist who can assist you in a safe environment. And so thank you, everyone, for logging on. And I appreciate everyone. And so I hope the best for you. And always remember, take care of yourself and stay healthy. Until the next time, I'm Craig. I'll see you next time. Thank you.